This is so loud, yeah. Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, October 4th, 2023 City of Oregon City regular meeting. I would like to welcome everybody that's here in TV land and in person, and we will convene the meeting as of now and have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Present. Would you all please stand and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, everyone. We have one proclamation on our schedule for tonight, and this is done was initiated by myself and the Clackamas Community College, and I will just say before I read it that they are having an event on Sunday, the 8th of October at the Environmental Learning Center to celebrate and spread the word about Indigenous Peoples Day, and I believe that is from 11 until 4. I'll check that before we end the meeting. So our proclamation this evening is, whereas the City of Oregon City recognizes that the indigenous peoples of the lands that would later become known as the Americas have occupied these lands since time immemorial, and whereas the city honors the fact that the City of Oregon City is built upon the traditional homelands of the Clackamas, Cascades, and Tumwater bands of the Chinooks, the Tualatin and Pudding River bands of the Kalapuya, and the Northern Molalla peoples, and recognizes the inherent sovereignty of the 9 federally recognized tribal nations in the state of Oregon and all indigenous peoples everywhere. Whereas the city values the many contributions made to our community through indigenous peoples' knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, arts, and the deep cultural contribution that has substantially shaped the character of the City of Oregon City, and whereas the city has a responsibility to oppose the systematic racism and colonization towards indigenous peoples in the United States, which perpetuates high rates of poverty and income inequity, exacerbating disproportionate health, education, and social crises, and whereas the Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations to the United Nations, sponsored by the International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas. And whereas the city is committed to protecting and advocating for justice, human rights, and the dignity of all people who work and live in Oregon City, and vows Oregon City to uphold the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, endorsed by the United States on December 16, 2010, and whereas the Declaration recognizes the rights of Indigenous people to the dignity and diversity of their cultures, traditions, histories, aspirations, which will become appropriately reflected in the education and public information, and in places of obligation in states to take effective measures in consultation and cooperation with the indigenous peoples concerned, to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination, and to promote tolerance, understanding, and good relations among indigenous peoples and all other segments of our society. Now, therefore, I, Denise C. McGriff, Mayor of the City of Oregon City, do proclaim October 9th, 2023 as Indigenous Peoples Day, and ask the citizens of Oregon City to utilize this day as an opportunity to reflect on the ongoing struggles of indigenous people of this land, and to celebrate the thriving cultures and values of indigenous people in our region, and to stand in solidarity with indigenous people everywhere, encourage other businesses, organizations, and public institutions to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday of October, and to commit to the efforts to promote the well-being and growth of Oregon City's indigenous community. And as of today, I will set my hand on the proclamation. Thank you, everyone. So we will proceed to our regular business agenda. And we have number 4, we have citizen comments, and I have one from Mr. Bob LaSalle. And you may come forward whenever you can and will. And thank you for coming.
Well, hello, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Bob LaSalle, and I live in Oregon City. At last Monday's CIC meeting, Jared Lyman gave us a presentation on the new city website And it was very informative, answered a lot of questions, and we brought up several issues that still need to be addressed, but that's understandable. I'd just like to thank the IT department for their hard work on a project that is beyond most of us to understand. We just work with the end project or product, hope it works. If it doesn't, we bitch. It's looking good so far, but still needs a lot of work. I'd also like to thank Matt Zook for presenting us with the new CIC budget spreadsheet. It looks to be providing more information, and unlike the old spreadsheet, seems to have accurate figures. Thanks for the good information, Matt. My main reason for addressing you tonight is the continuing problem with the acoustics in this room. I recently emailed all of you in regard to that. The only reply I got was from Mayor McGriff, and I appreciate her responses. Today, Jacob Wiley showed me what may be attempted to solve the problems, and I appreciate that. I've expressed my concerns on several occasions, and it's a well-known fact that the acoustics suck. Solutions have been suggested, tried, and failed. There have been some improvement, but still not good at all. I'm not sure you can hear me clearly now. And I'm sure anyone in the audience can't. The use of earphones is available, and they work, but there certainly are enough of them for everybody to go around. And the time for excuses is over. This problem has existed since this building was constructed. You are doing the public, the staff, testifiers, and yourselves a disservice by continuing to operate under these conditions. How can you give justice to anyone testifying before you when they can't be understood? The public rarely attends the meetings in this room because of the poor sound quality. There are solutions. Jacob told me some of the solutions that they're going to be trying soon, and I can give you numerous
Do you have much more, Bob? That I don't know if you heard that, but now there's a new buzzer that goes off when your 3 minutes are up. So would you like a minute or two more?
Please, just
okay.
A minute. I can give you numerous examples of good sound in huge rooms. There's a particular place down at Fort Benning, Georgia, that they give instruction to 400 or 500 students at a time. Everybody in the room can hear it. And that's where lives are at stake on those classes down there. I realize the issue is trying to be corrected, but in the meantime, everyone suffers. How can you justify continuing meetings in such an environment? It's a serious injustice to the citizens and needs to be corrected. Now, I recommend, I don't know if somebody's pride has to be swallowed or not, but I recommend that all meetings in this room be returned to the City Hall Old Commission Chambers immediately. There's no reason not to. It's not as if there's not enough room to handle the throngs of people that attend these meetings. I mean, they're overwhelming, I understand, but there's still enough room down there. I would not expect an answer, but at least a discussion about this subject. I thank you for your attention, and I'm providing a copy of my testimony for the record.
Thank you, Bob. Just for the record, I'll acknowledge that we have correspondence that's in writing from Jerry Herman, regarding the audio situation, and we also have correspondence from Carol Earl regarding the Housing Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County's proposed project. So that's just letting people know that those came in. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation on the new, I say new, Oregon City website. And which of our fabulous staff gets to do that? Jacob, get that clear. It's nice to see you, David.
Thank you. It's nice to see you too.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for this time this evening. We are excited to give you a quick update on the new website. It went live on September 4th, includes a refreshed design, link structure, and many other aspects that were brought up by the Commission during goal-setting retreats.
And you are?
I'm Jared Lyman, sorry. And I'm joined by David Knoll, the IT manager. He's been the driving force behind this project, put in countless hours on it, and he's going to start things off with kind of a talk about the technology and so forth.
Thank you, Jared, and thank you, Commission, for making some time to hear a little bit about this. This will be a brief, not introduction, because you have been introduced to it, but for the background of the website, you know, we had discussed this during the strategic plan, and it was part of your Commission goals to execute a new website. So we are very proud to have gone through that process, and thank you very much for your support. Tony Conkle, Jared, and Mike Dubai also worked very closely on this project. And so, oh, are we clicking?
Yep.
Which button is it?
There you go.
It's a good thing you have IT people here. So I do want to thank all of the department heads, the project team that we assembled from all departments, the Civic Plus design team, and we also put out a community survey to, as an initial survey to help guide our final product. So thank you to everyone. We focused on a couple of important things on the website, and ADA compliance was a big one. We have some tools in place to continually monitor and improve that, or at least keep it stable without it deteriorating over time. But that has a lot to do with you know, fonts and CSS styling, the presentation of the pages to make them readable for ADA compliance. We also really focused on the ease of use for residents. We streamlined a lot of page content and the number of pages themselves to help narrow down the searches that people would need to go through to get the information. Improve the navigation, hopefully, to, again, target people to get the information quicker. One of the biggest redesign elements was the citizen-centric, the business-facing aspect of the website. So we wanted to make sure that topics and departments were organized so that that was designed for the citizen. And then, of course, mobile-friendly. Most, far more than half, it could be higher than that, use mobile for almost everything. So our site needed to accommodate that. And the last thing was Jared's World, increased opportunity for public engagement. So there are a number of tools built into the site that Jared's going to go through, but we are aware that we are on the beginning edge of using or optimizing many of those tools, and they'll continue to develop and improve over time as needs arise. So I guess the next slide is our introduction to the website itself. So this is the landing, what you might see when you initially load the page. And standard to our old website and many others, along the top are your global navigation. That's where you'll find your departments and the major you know, areas of government in the global navigation. Down below in the graphic buttons, frequently targeted pages. In the lower left, we've added a language toggle from English to any number of other languages. In the lower right corner, Jared's World again is our Ellie the chatbot. And in the upper right corner is sort of where the citizen would start. They could log in, create an account, start signing up for notifications and whatnot, as well as search the site. So that's the basic background and introduction to our process, and I'll turn it over to Jared.
So what are people, so when we have search and account sign-in, so if people have an account, they're going to sign in, but they don't necessarily have to have one?
You don't need to have an account to use the site, but if you create one, you'll have a dashboard available to you with your activities.
Okay.
And I'll be going into some of those activities and benefits of having an account in a moment. If you scroll down the page just a little bit more, you will see some more of the most commonly used links on the website, as well as our banners for updated information, press releases, alerts, and so forth. Again, just quickly trying to get users' information as quickly as possible. David mentioned Ellie for Elevator. That is our AI-powered chatbot on the website.
What? Elevator.
I had to work in a pun somewhere.
I get it, okay.
The really interesting thing about this tool is that the more it's used, the more it's going to learn and actually become more effective. I can't tell you how many things we've gone through and actually trained responses and so forth, but the really interesting thing is there is no way I could anticipate some of the questions that have come through already. So it's a little bit of anticipation, a little bit of reaction to seeing what's come through, but it's so far been pretty good at helping people find stuff maybe a little quicker than just a standard search would, because it's supposed to direct them right to where they need to go. One of the main functions we talked about was the community engagement functions. As you recall, you had a priority during the 21 to 23 goal setting session, and again in 23-25 of increasing community engagement. We've included a tool on the website, several actually, but the biggest one is community voice. And what this does is gives residents a chance to provide feedback on any number of what the tool calls initiatives. Essentially, it's an idea. This is a screenshot right now. One example is there's a 30-day comment period on the industrial commercial FIP through stormwater. Posted that information there. Users have a chance to provide comment on that section of the website. Should more people want to do it, they can create a discussion and so forth. Community event ideas is another one on there. Infrastructure improvements, Parks and Recreation's master plan process. It hasn't, as you can see, gotten a lot of use yet, but that's because I haven't really promoted it yet until, actually I wanted to wait until this session to kind of unveil it to the commission before I really kind of drove that home. You mentioned the accounts. One of the benefits of creating an account is the ability to, as David said, kind of customize your experience. You have a dashboard that will let you, as he said, see your activities. You can kind of see some of your, log in to or register for some content updates. For example, you can sign up for emails or text alerts on several aspects of the website, so you can get an update anytime a new press release goes out, or a meeting is added to the calendar, or any other event like, or any other type of thing like that. And again, we have that flexibility of adding more aspects of the website to this should there be a demand. And the final thing is opinion polls. It's a very simple little tool that we have that should the commission want to find out a little bit more, or any other department, about public and thoughts on the specific issue, we can put that up on the website, provide a few answers, and this informal poll will come up and people will be able to see the responses, and that'll help us, again, gauge some public sentiment and give people another opportunity to voice their opinion. And that is the quick run through, if there's any questions.
Questions or comments?
One question on the poll. How reliable can it be? I mean, I don't want the same person or group of person responding. So are you limited in the number of responses the individual can make?
Yes, using cookies and all that stuff on the website, it knows when you're there. There's ways around it, but somebody's got to be really bored to try to make that effort to spam the poll.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that, because I know sometimes when I rarely watch the evening news, they say, KATU viewer poll, and I'm thinking, well, how scientific is that, you know?
Well, I mean, this isn't anything I'd take to the bank, but it'll help you gauge
Yeah, but I
public
mean, you know,
sentiment,
it's like,
yeah.
how many people like hamburgers? Okay, 95% say yes and 10% say no. I mean,
Some people like them a lot. Some people like them a lot.
yeah, well, I want those people to show up on the poll, so, okay.
Can you go back to the slide, go back to the first one? Oh. Or maybe it's the second one. Okay, so the second screen, then go to the next one. That's further down on the homepage?
Yes, that's just a little scroll or swipe depending on your device on the page.
Okay. The reason I ask is I know, at least from the last time we did a website refresh, swimming pool is a hot topic that people click on. So I'm just wondering if it should be yeah, I see it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If you scroll down, but should it be on that list across the bottom?
And the thing is, we have some flexibility of customizing that. Should we, again, see a demand, or one thing I should mention, like those buttons, we can change it seasonally, like when we get to election season or something, we can change one of those to elections. So we have a lot of flexibility there.
Okay.
And again, as we monitor the use, we'll change stuff. I mean, notice I never said the website's done. It's never going to be done, but it'll be a constant work in process, but.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to see those 3 boxes down below where it says E-Trail News, City offers preservation grants, and you've got City launches new website. So I know one of the things that people look at a lot too is, you know, anything to do with our historic properties.
Yep, and
Historic resources, and there was one and the other one where you could just click there and then you could get into that pretty easily.
Can you go to the next? Oops, sorry.
Go ahead. Well, a search function, I was following up on your question. If your interest was swimming pool, can you just enter that up above in a search function and it takes you right to it?
or in the search function in the top right, or in the chat bar on the bottom,
And it would
either one will
take
get you there.
to that section on the swimming
Yeah,
pool?
it'll provide you with relevant links.
Okay,
Well,
that's
it's
good.
got Parks and Recreation, but, you know, does everybody know that the pool is under that? I don't know.
And that's why we have separate links for pool and for the Parks and Recreation, and for some other aspects, as people might not necessarily
Signing
make that
for
connection.
shelter.
Yeah.
That's another big one.
Can you go forward a couple? Trying to remember where, no. I did catch Ellie, though. I figured out where that name came from. Just a caution, acronyms. There's probably not one person in 100 that knows what FIP is.
I can't even tell you what it stands for at the moment, and I put that up there. It was a space issue that I couldn't put anymore, so I had to
okay.
drop it to that, because otherwise it was cutting off the middle of a word.
Okay, but wherever we can avoid acronyms.
Well, it
Please
says
do.
first read background, so hopefully they're gonna read that, maybe not.
And go one more. The community voice is the one I was looking for.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, yeah, that is community voice there.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I assume as a general user, excuse me, I wouldn't see what other people have commented, or would I?
No, it is a public discussion.
Okay.
It's kind of, it almost looks like, if you remember discussion forums that were popular back in earlier internet days. It's very similar to that, in that people, as long as they have an account, they can comment, other people can question, comment, and so forth. And again, the idea is to create hopefully a beneficial discussion around a topic.
Okay, good, because I was gonna ask if there was a way that we could get access as commissioners to all the comments, but if it's general knowledge, that's even better.
Yeah.
That's all I was wondering about.
Anything?
No.
Okay,
Good.
go ahead, yeah.
Well, I'm, with this conversation about the discussion forum, I'm glad to hear that this city is finally moving into the 90s. I really
You weren't even
appreciate.
born then.
I really appreciate this.
The 90s are back.
And I want to acknowledge how big of an undertaking this was. During my first, and currently still is, during my first budget season, this was something that I felt important about getting in the budget, because it's important that our residents have an easy to use mobile-friendly website that they can use for a variety of things. And so this has been a huge undertaking, it still is, and I appreciate the work of both of you and your teams, and encourage residents to check out the new functions. This is going to be a work in progress, and so obviously with thousands and thousands of different pages, some things will have slipped through the cracks, and I'm confident that our team and dedicated staff will be on that.
Well, I want to just add my thanks again for this. I mean, it was a goal, but I think it was also a goal of the staff who realized that what we had was probably adequate, but it could be better. So I know that this is a work in progress. It's never really done, but you're going to get the majority of it done, and then there'll be tweaks here and there. So thank you for all the work, and I hope that the public is understanding as we go through this process. I had some concerns. I didn't, but some citizens said about a month ago, well, I can't find the page that I was trying to get to because the website's under construction. And I said, patience. So thank you both, and thank you to all the staff that has inputted into this. And I'm sure you all will have more suggestions about things to make your areas of this better. But thank you for all the work.
Thank you.
Good work, gentlemen.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Right, so we'll be probably getting more updates on this as we go along. So we have the adoption of the agenda and also the consent agenda. And there are, let's see, 6 things on here. Does anybody have any questions about any of these?
I just see there's representatives from Bud's Towing It. I don't know if they had anything to say or if they're good with what is there.
They just want us to get it approved, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I was real pleased to see we're continuing the intergovernmental agreement with West Linn for Meals on Wheels. I think that is vitally important, and of course we always need drivers, so if you have a little bit of time and you want to help somebody out, call the senior center. I did have just a couple of questions about 7D. I don't particularly want to pull it, but I think the questions will be easily able to be answered. So who do we currently have for our services right now? Is this the same folks?
We have, it is the same folks, yes.
And so I'm not surprised that we did not get a number of bidders. That seems to be the name of the game now, and across all disciplines, where you put a proposal out and you might get 1 or 2, or you might get like 0, and then when you go back to ask them why they're not bidding, you get this laundry list of reasons why people are not proposing. And I don't understand that, because I understand there's still problems with people looking for jobs. So
Yeah, this is definitely a little bit of a capacity, ability to hire to
yes,
utilize one service.
right. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda, or are there any other questions?
I'll move to approve consent agenda.
It's been moved by Commissioner Smith and seconded by Commissioner Mitchell to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, so we don't have any public hearings tonight, and thank you, everybody are you all from Bud's Towing? No, just you two? Anyway, thank you for coming, so appreciate it. Thank you for the service, we appreciate it. So we have 3 items on general business. We have Resolution 2322, 6th Amendment to the Oregon City Rules of Procedure. Mr. Conkle, did you want to add anything to this?
I do not. I'm going to actually turn this over to Mr. Wiley. Work putting together this update to the proposed City Commission rules of procedures. There was a work session discussion on this item as well, but then there were a couple ads that I think Jacob wanted to walk through and clarify with the commission, as they obviously are the city commission's rules of procedure. And we want to tailor them to make sure that they implement what you would like.
And your voice dropped during half of that statement. So in keeping with people not being able to hear, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you for having me back. As a reminder, we talked about this at the August work session. Since then, we did, and with speaking with the city attorney, add a couple new things. So I wanted to highlight those before we move on. I'll start up with a discussion of the proposed election residency policy that we had talked about, and I drafted the policy based on the feedback we got at the work session. The conflict of interest rules that Carrie provided us, and the other minor updates. So the proposed election policy is an elaboration, as you remember, from the charter, where a city resident for the previous 12 months and a qualified elector, those folks are eligible to run for election. As we talked about at the work session, we have a two-step process. The step one is kind of an expedited review. So in this step, we would have a form that the candidate would fill out. This would be separate from the, separate from the SEL form that I'm sure you all are familiar with. We would compare the addresses in the forms, the identification that they provide at the time, and the voters registration information. If all of those addresses match, they would be determined to be a resident. And remember, there's two components here. There's a residency and a qualified elector. So this is two steps of just to figure out residency. We would only go to step two if there was something that didn't match. Step two is if there's something inconsistent, we weigh the following evidence, verbal statements. So it's kind of goes in different directions. If you say you're not a resident, then we care a lot that you say that. If you say that you are a resident, we don't care so much because we need to actually have provable objective evidence.
Well, we should care on both of them.
Well, we do care, but we treat them differently. Voters registration, address history, we'll take moderate weight for that. Identification addresses, so like their driver's license or whatever form of identification they provide, state issued. Tax filings, DMV records, and government documents, we'll give those moderate weight. Mail, we wouldn't accept PO boxes, moderate weight. We wouldn't require a continuous 12-month record just here and there unless circumstances require more. That was what the feedback I got from the commission's work session. So property records and leases, so if they bring in a deed that says I own a home, we'll give that moderate weight. Utility billing information, we're going to give that low weight. That was the feedback we got from the work session, that that's not a very good source of information about where someone lives. The next sort of prong of the two-prong test is the qualified elector. In this case, we've interpreted that to mean that they are registered to vote in that election. They need to be registered to vote in Oregon City at the time, or able to show that they would become eligible to vote in that election. And that was the feedback we got from Commissioner Marl about young candidates that may be eligible to vote, but are 17 when they file. Requires the address of the voter's registration to match the one in the filing forms, and the city recorder may request a potential candidate to update their voter's registration prior to certification, and that would be in the instance that their addresses say they moved across town, they're still a resident, but they didn't update their voter's registration. We would require them to do that before we would certify.
Requiring proof that they moved, or we're just taking their word for it?
In this case, the address information would be from the prior prong. So if they write in the form an address, say it's on near City Hall someplace, and they provide us a driver's license that says they're near City Hall, and their voter's registration is for someplace on the other side of town, say over here by Lipke, we would ask them to update their voter's registration to match the one at by City Hall, for example, just to make sure everything's consistent before we certify them. They are still a qualified elector for Oregon City in either case, so we're just trying to make sure everything's clean and straightforward. There's no strange questions that could be asked, like, why are they registered to vote someplace else? The next component of the policy is the City Commission's review as the final judge. I kind of broke this up into chunks, so it would be before the certification date and after the certification date. I would hope that that's very rare that that would happen, but we have had that experience. Prior to certification, it would be by the request of the city recorder, which is me. If there's something very inconsistent, or there's several addresses, or I just can't make sense of it clearly, I would refer that to the city commission. And that would be through a special election, or if circumstances were perfectly aligned, a regular meeting, the next regular meeting. The other method would be request from 2 city commissioners. So I would be providing you that information. I'm sure you're aware I email the city commissioners once a new candidate files. If there was a substantial question that 2 of you raised as to that person's residency, you could then bring that information back to me and I would schedule a special meeting. If it happens after certification, say there's also a similar two ways. The city recorder, if there's clear and conclusive reasons to believe they are not a resident, so they come in and tell me, sorry, I moved, I need to withdraw, or they change their voters registration or some other thing that's clearly they are not a qualified elector, for example, they're no longer eligible to vote. So in the strange instance that someone is certified with their voter's registration, I want to be clear that it could be residency or qualified elector, that they could become decertified. Say they come in and change their voter's registration to can be for some reason. I will have to check before the election to make sure that they are still registered to vote in Oregon City. If they've moved their voter's registration for whatever reason, they would become disqualified, and I would just disqualify them at that point. The other one would be the city commission. If new evidence comes forward through the public, 2 city commissioners may call a special hearing, special public hearing. It would be very similar to the one prior certification. At that point, though, it would be after the certification, and we, as we know, the effect of decertification, which is that third point, they would still appear on the ballot, but they would not receive a certificate of election. They would not be seated, and they would not be allowed to take the oath of office. So at that point, because they would not be eligible, they would just basically be stricken from and that's only in the circumstance that they win. So if they lose, there's nothing to talk about, it's moot. There's also some general items that we talked about at the work session. Filing must occur at least 7 days prior to the date of certification. The burden would be on the potential candidate to prove residency, and I made sure to include in the policy that I am able to still ask questions and do an independent investigation if needed, but the burden is on them to prove that they are eligible. The standard of evidence is clear and convincing evidence. To be less than beyond a reasonable doubt, something you'd think of like criminal, where there's no way it didn't happen. And preponderance of the evidence, which is like majority. So it'd be something more like, if there's one thing that's odd, it's okay. But if it's like say 60% says one thing, 40% says another, that's not good enough.
What would you consider one odd thing?
Perhaps they inadvertently gave me a bill that went to a different address. Or they gave me a credit card statement that had an old address on it in 12 months ago for some reason. Something odd. That doesn't necessarily mean they weren't living where they said they were living, but it is odd.
To me, that would be a red flag.
It would be a red flag. Is it enough of a red
Doesn't mean
flag?
that it's right or wrong, it just, it'd be like,
I would ask questions for sure. But if once I continue that investigation and find that it's just, they forgot to update their catalog subscription, I would say, okay, that's fine. You've met the burden. A potential candidate waives any prohibition on the public release of any submitted evidence, and the city recorder may request specific types of evidence if necessary. So I would be able to say, hey, I actually need 12 months of continuous residency because it's really unclear that it appears that you moved 6 months ago and came back. This is the component provided by our city attorney. This is the conflict of interest rules. We've kind of talked about that, so I just have this single slide kind of summarizing, or literally has the text that we were adding. The other minor changes, the ones that we talked about at the work session, the American second motions. So that's part of Robert's rules. We just want to write it down in our rules of procedure because it's a common practice. The addition of decorum grounds to remove someone from the meeting. Neighborhood associations may speak for 5 minutes in public comment. The new additions are added since the work session. Threatening behavior added to the decorum rule above, so it would be something that makes a reasonable person fear for their bodily harm, bodily harm to them. We added a section elaborating on dignity and respect for staff and prohibited certain types of statements. And the inclusion of Resolution 2235's appointment policy for HRB and Planning Commission. That resolution prior said that we would add that to the next rule of procedure amendment, and so we are bringing that forward as listed in the resolution. With that, that's a summary of my presentation. I welcome any feedback or comments.
I guess I just have one. Again, I'm not going to say that my memory is absolutely 100%, but I recall in the past that neighborhood associations had more than 5 minutes. So I recall it was like 15 minutes for the applicant, neighborhood associations got 10 minutes, and then there was a 5-minute rebuttal by the
That
the
might
applicant or
be,
appellant.
that would be from the land use code, or land use public hearing portion. And I believe what you're referencing is if they are the appellant, if they're appealing the decision, they're given more
either way.
time. What's that?
Could be either way.
I'm not sure myself. But I believe that what we have currently is 5 minutes for a general comment.
So that's just,
That's for
that's not
any
a way.
time.
I just wonder why we have a separate set of numbers for land use, and then we have a separate set for something else, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out why we aren't making them.
That's sort of a creature of the way the rules are structured. We have a separate section for land use public hearings.
Right.
And that kind of,
That's in the code.
that sort of led to confusion that we're talking about right now, actually. Did that apply all the time, or did it only apply during a land use public hearing? And so we're kind of addressing that right
The
now.
reason I'm asking, it came up at a recent neighborhood association meeting that I attended that was not my neighborhood.
Oh,
So I said, I will ask it.
yep.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I think in the land use, if I'm recalling correctly, it's 3 minutes for general public, 5 minutes for a neighborhood association. Where you get into the longer time period is if you're the applicant or the appellant during an appeal, because we've typically seen neighborhood associations act as the appellant in an appeal, so that they get the 10 minutes
Okay.
versus the 5 if
Right.
they're just a part, or have standing to be a part of the hearing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think even if they're trying to establish standing, to me, the 5 minutes is pretty short.
Okay, so we're differentiating between land use
I know,
and public comment.
yeah.
So-
So it's just something that came up.
I think land use tends to be more complex with multiple issues.
Yep.
And if the neighborhood association is acting as the appellant, I mean, they're gonna produce their statement, and then there's an allowable time for the respondent to rebut.
Right.
But I think in terms of the average meeting, I think the times are sufficient to make your message concise, get up there and deliver it, and be done. Land use is a whole other world. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we've been through that, and we know what that entails.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify it again because it was asked of me at a recent neighborhood association that I attended,
Yeah.
so.
And as you can see, I pulled up those rules so you can reference those time periods. It currently listed as 5 minutes for representatives of neighborhood associations, 10 minutes for the applicant, and 15 for the appellant in the hearing, like in an appeal situation.
Well, and typically, if the mayor or the commission majority warrants more time for a particular reason, because that neighborhood requests it for some reason, then that's
Yeah,
a viable
Yeah, we can do
solution.
that on a case-by-case basis. Okay, any further questions? Do we have a, yeah, go ahead.
No, I've got a few things.
Okay.
Is there or should there be a process for someone who wants to run who is found to not be a resident can appeal the city recorder's decision to the commission?
We don't have that in the current policy. I would say in that circumstance, I would probably do that myself. I can't, it's not in writing, but of course, if there's someone that feels adamantly enough that they are a resident and they can prove it, and I'm telling them that I don't think they're a resident, at that point, there's a level of confusion that I would just bring that to the city commission. That would, of course, it's not in writing there that they can by themselves appeal to the city commission the decision of whatever if I've decided to decertify someone. I consider that process of certification sort of if it's clear, and if it's unclear, it should come before the city commission as the final judge, because that is the charter. And the way we've written this policy, you're delegating that authority to me, which is a limited authority. And so I would, of course, not override your decision-making power in that regard, if that makes sense.
I appreciate your asking, but I would not be inclined to do that. Make that automatic if somebody has an appeal. I've got major issues with that.
And Commissioner Mitchell, there actually is a statute that allows a person who is upset by a decision of the city elections officer to take that to circuit court. So there is an opportunity to have that reviewed, not by the city council.
Okay.
I think it would be I would highly recommend we stick with that process, because it could be, you don't want frivolous appeals brought to the commission. Because it's like, no, it is obvious you are not a resident. Well, yes, I am. So I'm going to appeal it. That way, if Jacob's concerned and brings it to the commission, I have a little bit more confidence in that there's an actual issue of uncertainty there versus someone who just wants to be argumentative about something that's obvious. And in that case, go to circuit court, and we'll let you know.
Okay.
You can swear it into a judge and make that decision.
Just wanted to get it out there and make sure it's something we thought about. On the red line, I don't know if you can bring up the red line version. It's on page 12, section G, a qualified elector, item A. It says each potential candidate shall be a registered voter, blah, 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 of their eligibility to be a candidate for city commissioner. Or show, it doesn't say anything about mayor. I think we need to add or mayor.
Mayor is a city commissioner.
Yes, but you're not running for city commissioner when you file, you're running for mayor.
Right.
Yes, but that's not what you're filing for. And if we want the rules to apply, it needs to say that applies for people who file for mayor. Seems to me.
Bill was tilting his head.
It wouldn't hurt to have the clarification so later dispute running for mayor. So that's a good point.
And then I have a question on that same one.
Oh, yes.
Do point A and point C conflict with each other? Because A says you have to be a registered voter or show that they will become eligible to vote by the election. C says city recorder shall not certify a candidate unless they are a registered voter in Oregon City. It doesn't say or will become one.
I do see what you're saying. I believe the current process for an underage voter to register in the next election, they actually do register to vote. So they probably would be able to show that they are registered to vote in the next election, but I do see your point.
Where you get the new law where you're registered when you go to DMV, that's automatic now. I mean, it's not like you actually have to go and fill out some paperwork unless you change your voter registration.
I think that it does seem like A and C should be consistent.
That's right.
There's an or there, right, in A.
There's an or in A that is not in C. C says you have to be a registered election or he can't certify them, or elector.
Where you could meet A because we're going to find that you're, that they will become, they meet A because they will become.
Right.
But then C won't let you certify them because they're not, even though they will be.
Right.
Got a concern with adding, so the language is consistent. Okay, make A and C consistent.
I can do that.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have.
I know we put forth our best effort on this elections piece. And I like the 7 calendar days prior to certification because we need time to respond and investigate. And I believe there's a totality of the evidence consideration that you may be faced with.
Right.
As you weigh those different criteria. I'm curious what the time period is between the time that we as a city certify the individual and the publication of the voting pamphlet or the printing of ballots. Anybody have an idea what that time period is?
I know from past experience that they send the certified candidates they send that list to the printers about a week or 2 after the certification date. So it's a very narrow window before they actually send the order to the printers, which would be when we can't go back, right?
Yeah, what I really want to avoid is the decertification where the candidate's name still appears on the ballot because it still impacts the count.
Right.
Especially if someone lost by a few votes and those votes were allocated to the decertified candidate.
Right.
So we're just going to have to be cognizant and conscientious of that. And we all went through the last experience and it still rings in our mind. So it's a best effort and we'll work through it.
Is there a motion?
No.
Would you all be comfortable with me saying that specific language out loud for that section G, qualified elector? And so I can be very precise in how I write that amended attachment. Would that be all right? So the city recorder shall not certify a candidate unless they are a registered voter in Oregon City or show by clear and convincing evidence that they will become eligible to vote in Oregon City at the time of their election, and the address associated with the voter's registration matches the address listed in the required forms described in section, what was that? 7EA above. That sound correct? All right.
The only other comment I would make is on page 5, what has become the new section D as in David, preservation of order piece, the red line statements. Statements by the public, other staff, or city commissioners regarding a city staff's job-related performance, including qualifications, bias, honesty, integrity, trustworthy, shall not be expressed during a public meeting. But I think, it's a thin line between a tasteful expression of challenging one's qualifications. Honesty is a personal attack and integrity is a personal attack, trustworthy. Those I see, but qualifications, I'm not sure that should be in there because that's a valid question. If you're going to sit before this commission and make a statement based on your qualifications, I think anyone has the right to question, and what is your experience or work experience or educational experience that allows you to give us that information? And I think I don't think that should be in there. I obviously agree that the tone of any discussion should be respectful and professional. There's also the section below, number 8, about breaching the decorum. I'm all for avoiding disruptive behavior, certainly personal attacks, and we've seen them over the years. Defamatory or slanderous statements, dangerous or threatening behavior. Those are more of a physical nature, such as a reasonable person exposed or experienced this behavior could believe that the person was in imminent danger of physical. I can see physical harm, but I don't know about mental harm. That's really a subjective thing. I mean, you hurt my feelings and I feel mentally harmed. I mean, I don't worry about the mental, and it's a hard thing to judge. And I don't know if you can put a measuring stick on that. physical harm, obviously, somebody rushes up here or attacks someone, that's obvious. And apparently the reaction to that is they're thrown out.
Right.
But I mean, I think we need to watch the extent of which the perception of, feelings of mental harm are very different to assess versus physical harm.
Can I give you an example?
That you personally experienced?
Yes, being not in this room, but as you recall, when I first came on the city commission, somebody else was the mayor, and a person came from the city of West Linn, and we were talking about how there weren't any problems with regard to it was leading up to the whole issue regarding the situation was going on with Ferguson and some of those things. And the gentleman expressed his concern that there weren't any problems regarding any race issues whatsoever. And I can tell you that that was a problem for me. And I responded in kind. I respected the fact that he had the guts to come up and say it, but, to say it in a way that insinuated that, everything was just hunky-dory, and, I wanted to basically say, well, you are a, white Anglo-Saxon male, and you don't really know what it's like to have somebody discriminate against you, so what the hell are you talking about? I mean, I didn't say that, but I said it in a different manner. That was a problem for me. That gave me a lot of mental anguish, and you all witnessed it. You didn't, but it was like, really, it was very stressful for me.
And I understand that, and I understand that many of those type of rules, whether it be harassment or sexual harassment, those are in the mind of the recipient. And I think the proper thing to do is an expression from the person that received that, and the chastisement and the direction to discontinue that by the other members of the commission.
Well, I did. The person in the center chair didn't say anything, and so I felt I had to.
I remember.
And I believe you as well said something to the gentleman as well. The rest of us were kind of a little bit in shock, but.
Well, sometimes there's moments that occurred that were so shocking that they caught one off guard.
We all were there, believe me, we all were there.
But I feel it falls within the purview of those who are the recipients of information, back to the original red line, to challenge the qualifications of a presenter, unless they're well known. I mean, like when I came in with my report on the Cove, I stated the qualifications of those people. So I think qualifications is a valid question. Now, it's not always what you do, but how you do it. If somebody sits there and presents something, there's a difference between calling them an outright liar and saying, either you're misinformed or we need to correct that impression now. So some of it is the manner in which you conduct yourself. But I do feel like qualifications are a valid question. I'll leave it at that.
I think the intent with this was really to give the commission the tools to raise the elevation of the discussion. Because I do agree there are ways to disagree, and there are ways to question, and there are ways to challenge that aren't personal attacks, but are fact-based observations or explanations of opinion. So, like I said, this was what we were able to come up with, really just trying to give you, as the commission, the tools to run a meeting how you would like, under the decorum you'd like to see. And if it's too much in here, it's easy enough to take out.
I think on the first one, I think there's times when you question the quality of the information that you're being presented as a commissioner. And that's not to infer that it's directly misleading or something. It's, if someone says, we're buying a new police car, and, or any type of equipment, and you say, you ask if they've investigated current trade-in value, what it would be. I mean, I don't think that's an aspersion on performance or how you conducted your job. It's just to qualify the information you've received. So, I think there's valid questions. Again, qualifications are among the highest, to me, And it's not a question of job-related performance if you ask, how did you evaluate, before you presented this information to your commission, what were your decision-making steps? That's not a question of job performance, I don't think. A direct attack is not allowable, though. So anyhow, those are just my thoughts on it as worded. I would certainly take out qualifications, or I think you can question one's qualifications.
I think you can question all of them. And one of the things I will say is, if you read the paragraph above in D, you don't need anything else. Above in D, it basically says a person in attendance at the meeting who becomes disorderly, abusive, or disruptive may be removed from the meeting, period. You don't need to spell it out. If the commission at the time feels that that's unnecessary, they can remove based without even that red line added. The red line worries me, and it worries me because, well, I'm a public employee. That's part of the job. Being a public employee is part of the job, getting, putting yourself out there, getting, having, you know, the citizens have a right to come up here and question public staff and ourselves. And if it's gone beyond the outline of what the commission believes, then we can have them removed. We don't need to spell it all out there. The other thing is that so I think that's one aspect. The other aspect is this doesn't say anything about any public staff or other city commissioners saying any of these things about a commissioner. Only about staff. So it's kind of one-sided that way. The other thing is, especially with qualifications and some of these other issues, the city manager is our city staff, which we at any public meeting have every right to discuss any of these things about. So remove the whole red line. Up and above, the D section says, quite frankly, we can remove anybody for any disruptive behavior that's not respectful at any moment. We don't need to spell out why.
Including ourselves?
Well, no, what was 3 commissioners?
I actually think Commissioner Smith's suggestion is a good one, because you get into a situation where if you don't delineate it in the red section, maybe it's not among the offenses, even though the first section already
We have everything that we need there.
So I'd be fine with eliminating the explanatory red section. I think we're strong enough on the first
bottom
section.
8 is fine. Because that goes into more detail there, but.
Well, we should hear from others.
I was just asking that. Others?
I guess the section that's there almost covers it, but it talks about attacks on personalities or impugning of commissioners and citizen motives. I'm not sure that motives is the right word, but it doesn't specifically address staff. So I don't know that the existing language covers everything that is intended to be covered by the red language. But I do see Commissioner O'Donnell's point. Qualifications is fact-based, I guess I'll say, and the others that are listed are more how about somebody goes about their work. So, as Commissioner O'Donnell said, asking someone about their qualifications to have made a decision, I don't see that as being the same kind of attack as an attack on those other 4 would be.
I generally agree with what Commissioner Mitchell said. I think that I wouldn't be opposed to getting rid of that red line section if there's a little more specification in the above section that makes it clear. I understand why it's put there, and while being held accountable to the public as part of being a public employee, it ought to be done respectfully. And so getting something there that includes the ability to question how something is being done is important. It just needs to specify that, like it says, is done respectfully and professionally.
I think a simple statement that this paragraph applies to all parties present. I mean, it includes the commission, it includes the staff, it includes everybody present in the meeting.
Well, as a former staff person, I believe that the people that we have hired meet qualifications, otherwise they wouldn't be here. And I know from my standpoint that at a hearing a long time ago, I was, a person challenged my qualifications regarding my profession. And it was at a planning commission meeting, and the planning commission chairman basically shut that conversation down and proceeded to tell that person what my qualifications were. And obviously I wouldn't have been hired because I met all the qualifications. So occasionally we get that. I see why this is in here, and I don't have a problem with it. I think it supplements the portion above. I have consistently stated publicly, privately, and elsewhere that we have a very qualified staff. They work very hard for us, and we are, I think, obligated to a certain degree to be respectful to them. And I would not want anybody trying to impugn anybody's character regarding their qualifications or anything else. I think we put a lot of trust and faith in our staff, and it distresses me to a large degree when members of the public or otherwise make comments about, well, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, yeah, they do know what they're talking about because they're here. You can agree to disagree. But I think that getting beyond that is inappropriate, and I would certainly be the first or second one to cut off that conversation because I don't think it's appropriate. If one of us has an issue, then I think we do need to communicate that to the manager and not on this dais. I don't think that's appropriate either. And I know people talk about the fact that they say, well, you guys are public servants. Well, I can tell you I am not anybody's servant, and I don't care for that word. I'm a public official, and I have an obligation to this community, but our staff are not servants. And I wish that term would just go away, because it has some bad connotations for me personally. Talk about harm, Mr. O'Donnell. But people go into public service for many, many reasons. And some of them are pay, some of them are security, some of them have to do with altruism. So I would not question anybody. It's not an easy job. Maybe the private sector is easier. People tell me that it is. I don't think so, but that's just my personal opinion. So I'm looking for a consensus on where you want to go with this. I think you've all made some very valid and great comments. And so what do we want to do?
I have another comment. So in your example, where you commented back to a citizen, that wouldn't have been allowed. Because you were commenting on a citizen's bias against this group or this body. That wouldn't be allowed, the way this is written. So if you look at this, really read it. I understand the tone should be respectful and professional, but if someone is willing to be dishonest in a public meeting, they have every right to be called out.
So you're saying we wouldn't be able to do that?
Absolutely. Well, it says shall not be expressed.
Bill, what's your,
It says, statements regarding the city staff's job-related performance, including bias, honesty, integrity, or untrustworthiness, shall not be expressed during a public meeting. So.
No, your example was a citizen, but I would equate them all to be the same. The way it's written.
so you're saying if they were disruptive and started name calling and all that, I couldn't like gavel them down and say, I'm sorry, we're not going to talk about this anymore or whatever, or, please sit down or whatever.
Your reply basically stating that you didn't feel comfortable or whatever, and that, I don't remember what the exact conversation was, but, the way that this is written, it's specific to only staff, which means any staff could say any of these things to us as commissioners, that any other variable of that, I pointed out the fact that it says city staff, which means we wouldn't be able to question the city manager on any of those things in a public meeting, which he's employed by us specifically. So that would be, there's the way it's written right now doesn't work. So I'll be voting no on that. And I think we could somehow add it to the upper piece. But, quite honestly, if a staff person is dishonest in a public meeting, they should be called out on it. It should have to be something that is followed up in writing a week later.
Well, it does. I think the reason why it is separated out in the following paragraph with the red line is because it does say in that second sentence in section D, the presiding officer shall preserve order and decorum, discourage attacks on personalities, or the impugning of commissioners and citizens' motives. So the policy does apply to commissioners. That's how it was originally, and I understand why the separation was put there because it was already there for us.
Well, then the red line can be changed to add that too.
And that's what I was saying, is that I don't think it necessarily needs to be separate.
So you're thinking in the existing first paragraph, the impugning of commissioners, staff, and citizens' motives? Adding staff, is that what is?
How does that not say everything that's in the red line?
If you guys want that, then, read the sentence as you just said it again, Tony.
So this is the second sentence in D, the first paragraph.
Right.
The presiding officer shall preserve order and decorum, discourage attacks on personalities, or the impugning of commissioners, staff, and citizens' motives, and confine commissioner debate to the question. I think that was what Commissioner Smith was saying was, could you just pull and add staff into that existing section? And then is there anything from the red line that you would like to add to the existing?
I don't think you need to. We have a consensus on making that change as suggested by Commissioner Smith.
I think that the statement as read by Mr. Conkle is pretty all-encompassing.
Yeah.
I do stand by my qualifications piece, and I'm not directing that at staff. I'm directing that at those who come before us with a proposed solution. It's like, do you have, especially in a technical nature, want to get rid of algae in the cove? Okay, they present us with what is
a bunch of bleach in it, and you'll ask them what they're called.
What is your life experience, education, or work experience that puts you in a position to put forward that solution? Well, we can't pour concrete after it's 120 degrees because, okay, what is your, tell me about why that is. So I think qualifications is a valid query, and I'm not directing it at staff. Even staff is probably questioning qualifications of those that present information because it's the basis of decision making.
Do you agree with the way Mr. Conkle read it?
Just so I'm sure I understand. So with what Mr. Conkle just read, which would be in addition to the black
Right.
section, but then removing that red line.
That's what I heard.
Section. Okay, yes.
Unless there was anything from red
To go into
that
the
you
other part.
wanted into into the existing paragraph, or if you felt like it was broad enough that you didn't need to spell anything out.
I think with that addition and with what is in the red line, point number 8, further down the page, I think for me, that gets us to where we want to be.
That was my suggestion,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
We're adding staff.
Okay, so you have consensus that we
Staff
want
is
to make
added.
that change?
Yes,
And eliminate the red, the paragraph that says statements made by, statements by, delete that and then add the addition that you suggested.
Yes, understood.
Okay, so we have agreed.
Okay.
Thank you for the discussion.
So I guess I'd ask, do you want to do a motion with those specific changes outlined, or would you like to bring us back, have us bring back a clean copy?
We can do a motion. Okay, can we have a motion, please?
Well, and there were other changes. There was the one to the election, being a qualified elector.
Right.
Yes.
There's that.
Yes,
We're gonna add mayor
Mayor,
to the one sentence. For GA and GC, we're gonna make it the same language so that it referenced, upon, a later, being able to certify at a later date, and
Right.
then moving staff up into section D and removing the red line of section D, second paragraph.
Move to approve the motion as just recited by our city manager.
There's a second. Second. It's been moved and seconded. Have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. So we'll, so do we need to bring this resolution back or no? Okay,
Nope,
all right,
we'll
so let's
clean it
go forward with the first reading of ordinance number 231009, declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and manufacturing of psilocybin products. And this is something we asked to have brought back based on our recent consensus at a work session.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Evening, Commissioners. Once again, this is proposed ordinance number 231009, declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacturing of psilocybin products. Local governments may adopt ordinance that prohibit the Oregon Health Authority from issuing psilocybin service centers and or manufacturing licenses within their jurisdiction. After an ordinance prohibiting psilocybin service centers and or manufacturing is adopted by a local government, the prohibition must be referred to the voters at the next general election. The City Commission requests that it be brought forward and determine if the ordinance should be considered to prohibit these services and manufacturing in the city limits of Oregon City. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I think we were pretty clear on this, and I'll ask for a motion.
I move to approve the first reading of ordinance number 23-1009, declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacturing of psilocybin products.
Second.
Ordinance number 23-1009, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City declaring a ban on psilocybin service centers and the manufacturing of psilocybin products within the city limits of Oregon City.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion carries. All right. Last item is item C, intergovernmental agreement, IGA, between Clackamas River Water and the Oregon City relating to the provision of water service to Trimble Creek, not the other one that I said last time. Concept. No, I know. That's why I just wanted to see if John was paying attention. I caught his eye. Thimble Creek Concept Plan area in the city of Oregon City.
Like a Crosby, Stills and Nash song or something there.
I'm just gonna change it.
We are requesting the approval and authorizing the city manager to execute the intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas River Water and the City of Oregon City, establishing certainty on the long-term water supply by the city and South Fork Water Board, agreement on assessing the area with city and South Fork Water Board system development charges, and instituting details about how the city would work with Clackamas River Water on an additional option to provide the temporary and partial water service to the Thimble Creek concept plan area. This item was continued from our last meeting to offer an opportunity for the entirety of the South Fork Water Board to be updated on this agreement and understand the information that was being provided. My understanding is that that meeting did take place. Mr. Lewis was in attendance, as well as the CEO for South Fork Water Board. My understanding is that it seemed like the conversation went well, and so we are requesting approval and authorization to sign this intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas River Water.
Add to that, yes, and I want to thank John for coming to the meeting and talking with everybody on the South Fork Water Board. Again, as I stated, I thought it was important for our colleagues in West Linn to hear what the proposal was. We asked a lot of questions. They asked a lot of questions, and I think it was good because some things came out. Commissioner O'Donnell had asked a couple of questions, and Mr. Lewis was able to adequately and more than adequately answer those. So everybody's up to speed. And I use the example of that if City of West Linn was going to be entered to an agreement with the Lake Oswego Tigard Water District that would affect anything to do with South Fork, we would want to be informed about that. Not that we would be approving anything, but we would want information so that we were aware of how it was going to possibly affect or not affect the water service that South Fork does provide. So I think it was beneficial, and again, I hope that the delay did not cause any problem, and our colleagues were very appreciative that we did that. So I thank both staff, Tony Conkle and John Lewis, for allowing for that time to occur. My only comment about this in the auspices of the city commissioner is the fact that I would like this agreement to be as absolutely short as possible. I don't want it to go on for 3 years or 5 years, or I want us to get our stuff done, get the service that we rightly should be providing to this particular area, and get them out of there. The one thing I was surprised about, I was told before the meeting that CRW folks were going to be attending, and then nobody attended. So I don't know what happened to that, and I did not ask any further. So is there any further discussion about this or questions regarding this? Okay, so let's have a motion. I would make it, but I can't.
Oh, maybe I need to preface it. We did a deep dive on this, people. We looked at it hard at the commission level, and we looked at it harder at South Fork. And we looked at it in terms of ownership, the legal aspects of it, the infrastructure, future ownership, SDCs. We dismembered this thing and looked at it in every way possible. And tonight's decision is based on that dissection of this thing with a goal of making it what we might want to term bulletproof. I don't want to be in any legal matters years from now. I certainly agree with the mayor. Let's get done what we need to get done within the earliest possible time frame allowable. But I tell you, it was a decision that was involved a lot of research and a lot of questions being asked. And the actions we took is based on the best information, that being legal and technical. And having said that, I'll move to approve the adoption of this IGA agreement.
Second.
Commissioner Adam Marl? Aye. Commissioner Frank O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith?
Abstain.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell?
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Again, thank you again, Mr. Lewis. It's much appreciated. And we will get through the Thimble Creek area. All right, so we have under communications, we're going to have a review of the 2021-2023 goals update. And then following that will be 2023-2025.
Thank you.
And I'm very excited about this.
As we all are. We're getting close to 21-23. It's still 2023. So what we try to do here, specifically on the, I'm going to focus on the projects that we're still trying to finish up from the last biennium. And start to transition. I think some of these projects really are multi-budget projects that are going to extend across. So yes, ma'am.
And if you put up the chart, that would be helpful.
Are you able to get to that,
I have it
Jacob?
right here in front of me, but
Okay.
just so people kind of know what we're talking about.
Sure.
Thank
Go
you
to
so much.
21.
really appreciated the way you did this. I mean, I read all the material and then I came back and looked at this and I said, oh, okay, this is like at a glance.
Yeah, trying to transition here.
Right.
For the ones that make sense to transition into the new biennial calendar, and then finishing up the ones that really, are going to be finished, that we see an end date coming here associated with them. Jacob's bringing up the kind of how we've tracked percentage-wise the projects and the goals identified during the 21-23 biennium. So really, IT is a continuing spectrum of IT strategic plan being implemented. And that morphs a little bit as projects come up, funding becomes available. We learned a lot during the ransomware attack that we experienced. So really that's, it's constant investment and improvements and training that goes into that. So while there were specific projects and we've identified specific projects through funding, there is also a more general education process that's constant, ongoing with staff. Looking at goal 2.5, that's addressing complete the Parks and Rec master plan and update the system development fees. So the Parks and Rec master plan is nearing its completion of the public process. Out of that public Parks and Rec master plan comes the project list, this capital improvement plan list, of which then we're going to have a discussion about system development charges, what those new SDCs should be for parks, but then also there's going to be as you're well aware, when we do these CIP lists, we have a SDC component and then a non-SDC component, which is grants, general fund, other funding sources, non-SDC. So that SDC conversation is really rolling into 23-25, which is why you'll see that on both 21 through 23 and 23 through 35, through 23 through 25. So really on this sheet, when I say 95%, I'm equating that to the master plan. So we're about to get that to a point where we're going to say that's done. Then I'm going to roll the SDC fee component into 23-25, and we'll track that one separately. The next item is infrastructure and equipment from ECDev. This is really the fiber optic study that we've been working on. So we had the consultant do the work related to trying to understand broadband throughout our community, what those opportunities are for investment to encourage, expand, provide broadband. The consultant work is done. Really, it's up to us internally to really vet what the consultant put together and bring that to the commission for a discussion. It's really about trying to find time to get that to the commission in a work session with sufficient time to be able to walk through that. Citywide facility master plan. We've completed the initial preliminary work, site visits of the facilities. The next stage right now is we are anticipating 3 2-hour meetings with kind of the facilities team made up of directors, facilities, to really talk about the programming and staffing over the next, what we foresee coming down over the next 15, 20 years. And at that point, we'll be getting close to being able to bring that to the commission to have a discussion. And, what you're going to find through that facilities plan is that there are buildings like this that, are in pretty good shape, right? We can talk about the audio component of this building, but really we're not going to be putting an addition on this building, right? Versus what do we do with CD across the way here in City Hall? Is there a discussion about a long-term plan? What do we do with, now that we have Mountain View Reservoir, we have Henrici Reservoir, the property that we just bought, we have Center Street, we have First Street, right? We've had a discussion, quite a bit of discussion. So, while there will be multiple buildings that we look at, I imagine, and we're trying to really focus in on the ones that we believe are going to be the ones that are going to have probably a lot of discussion at the commission level. So we look forward to bringing that.
I have a question for you on that.
Sure.
So I know that we had a very brief discussion about it, but I hope being added to this study is what are we doing with the back 40
of this facility?
of this facility?
What I think that goes into, I know we've had discussions that wouldn't it be great if City Hall was up at this location and became kind of a complex of, whatever is in City Hall, whatever, departments are in close proximity to this building, right? But it's never been adopted or debated or put out there. So I think that is part of this discussion is, is this the location? And if it is, we should state that, we should adopt that, and then, at the right time, we'll study that and determine what we do. So this plan is to begin those conversations to start providing some clarity on some of these longer term decisions.
I think the other thing that Commissioner O'Donnell and I both have on our list is obviously the disposition of Center Street.
Yes.
So that's part of this. And again, I appreciate the concerted effort to take a line from my colleague. It was one of the things that I asked about when I started on the city commission is why do we not have a facilities plan? We're building this thing and this thing and this thing, and it just didn't seem to me like it was initially, this is my first impression, was it was not a really coordinated effort. And we need to really be thinking about this, which is why I was really happy that you embraced this and said, yes, we can't just keep, building this and building this and building this. We have to look at it as holistically as we can and look at what the long range implications are. And obviously, from this morning when I showed you the article from the paper, it was staffs, City Hall is moving to 320 Warner Milne Road. This is only designed to be a temporary building. Well, we were there from 1980 until 2016. So how temporary was that? Because we didn't have a plan. The plan was we were going to build on the adjacent property at 320 since we already owned it. Well, that didn't happen either. So thank you.
I think we always have to differentiate between wants versus needs. Certainly in an environment where the cost of construction that we're experiencing are absolutely overwhelming. But, I don't mind having a conversation, just a reality check of what we're experiencing.
Certainly, yeah.
36 years.
I think when we built First Street, it really did provide us some capacity, because we went from City Hall and we were putting people in hallways to, being able to clear out, a large portion of a quarter of our downstairs. So from that standpoint, it gave us a little bit of breathing room to do this. And I agree, there's going to be a lot there, and it's going to be a prioritization exercise as well as a funding discussion on, how do we start addressing this? But it at least provides us a place to start.
When we built First, it was a solution to a multitude of the problems, past, present, and future. And a centralized location will allow service as the city grows. It provided relief to members of the community who take issue with the current or previous location. It actually unloaded some difficulties from other departments, including cemetery and parks, and gave us the opportunity to relocate people in a more productive manner. So I think that was one
that providing,
and
providing
centralized.
meeting their needs.
Yeah.
I mean, we all saw what they were in. It was like, really? Okay, yeah.
So I think that was one of the better moves we've pulled over the last few years.
Okay. So I'm going to continue down. So the ones that were marked 100%, so we didn't, other than IT, I didn't change anything to 100%. So these had already been done on the last update. So really, I'm discussing the ones that were still open on the last update that I gave 3 months ago. So then we're going to jump down. So then we get into some of the housing options. So this is an ongoing conversation, as you're well aware of. The governor has a task force focusing on 5 areas for housing, affordable housing, housing production, that is in process right now. We did receive a draft. I did forward that to the commissioners late this afternoon. We'll be reviewing that as staff and providing comments back as that process continues along. So this is one where we're sliding this into 23-25. And you may recall you did set aside and budget some funds for us to bring in a consultant to help, depending on where this ends up going, once we kind of get the final direction on what we may or may not have to do as local jurisdictions as directed by the state. Then the last one is determine and establish relationships with the tribes. I've kept this one. So this is dealing, really right now, the main focus has been the Cayuse 5 Memorial up on the McLaughlin Promenade. The recent activity on that has been that it was presented to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee to provide them an update, receive feedback from them. That was presented by Mr. Reed and Mr. Lewis, and then the Historic Review Board did approve the historic review component of this development. So at this point, the site plan's done, Historic Review Board is done. We're now moving into and transitioning into the contracting and the portion of that project. So we would expect that to be done. Right now, the timeline we're looking at is April, May. We are hoping to accelerate that as we go through the procurement process to try to get that built much quicker. I think many of you, I know, who tried to forward you some information, Les Minthorpe, a tribal elder at the Confederate Tribes of Umatilla Indian Reservation, who was a strong proponent of this for decades, a direct descendant of one of the Cayuse 5, passed away about a week and a half ago. So, you know, it was disappointing that we couldn't deliver this project earlier so that he could be a part of seeing that, but it is a project and it will live on because of his efforts. So any questions about kind of trying to wrap up 21-23?
I just have one topic that causes me concern, and it's Goal 5, specifically 5.3, implementation of the tourism strategy, keyword being implementation. Progress are valued at 100%. I just don't know that if we've made that progress. Our focus has turned to a DMO, a destination marketing type thing. I don't see any progress being made in that. I look for us at this point, in my mind, we're 7 months away from the beginning of tourism season. Mm-hmm. The time for activity is now to put place, and I'm not sure that assessment, unless I'm misreading it, I don't see that an assessment of 100% of implementing a strategy has been attained. And it's kind of a time to market thing for me. I don't want another year to go by where we're not ready to entertain the maximum amount of tourism we can attract and have things in place.
And so I think that one was kind of addressing some of the goals from 21-23, like you know, the getting the funding out for the summer events, creating that process. And I think really that DMO is really what we're going to be working on now. I think that came out of the goal setting in January of this year. And so our goal is the first DMO discussion that we're scheduling is for the November work session to begin those discussions about what a DMO looks like, realizing that the DMO will not be created by spring or summer. Most likely. So what we're focusing on is we had the program set up last year for supporting events. We would advertise that earlier after the new year into 2024 while concurrently working to implement a DMO and have those discussions on what is it going to be for Oregon City? What type of a DMO? How are we going to set that up? I think there's just a lot of conversations that go into what that is based on the funding that we have and what type of organization do we want that to be. So it is coming. I don't know that the DMO was really part of 21-23. I think it felt like that was a conversation that came out of the goal setting in earlier this year.
I don't see it on the next topic you're going to cover, which is 23-25. It sort of disappears in the mix. Although I suppose if you want to say create and promote a tourism infrastructure, that's pretty overlap, large statement. You know, it's the same discussion we had a year ago. Is like, let's get our product ready for market, and what can we do to attain that? What do we need in place to help us do that? Mm-hmm. So I don't want another year to go by and not reap the benefits of tourism.
So I just want, so we will be talking about DMO a little bit in November.
Yep.
But then so then you said first of the year kind of, talking about the process, basically parallel to that conversation with DMO, we need to be talking about this plan for the summer. So you were talking, first of the year?
Right, so if you recall, we were able to do the event funding. We got that out for this summer. It was a little bit late in the season, but we got it out for this summer. So what we're proposing to do is, we have the process and the application set up. So we would like to start that earlier while we're having the discussion about the DMO. So when we get to 23, 25, 5.1 is talking about the tourism infrastructure. And on the narrative for that are the important and relative dates. And it's promote the new 23-25 round of available funding for city-sponsored public event programming. And then the second bullet there is to recommend policies and strategies to enable the transfer of tourism activity to a legally organized entity such as a DMO. So it does get caught in the specific worksheets of the goals. So that was one thing I was going to point out, was when we did 21-23, we were very specific with about 20-some specific tasks almost under each goal. When we did 23-25, they were broader with kind of discussions under them. So we didn't do like a goal and we want these 4 outcomes as specifically as we did 2 years ago. So if we go to the goal strategy sheets, that's where we've implemented and discuss in more detail the projects that we're working on to implement the goal. So you're right, it's not on the specific goal that we have, but it is incorporated in our work plan based on our discussions at the goal setting and through the budget process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, my only thought was the DMO has been touted as our solution to tourism.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to take those steps, and we need the timetable you said, okay, we get it done in, November, December, we're within 5 months of prime time season. We need to not lose focus on it, is my thoughts.
Yeah, I guess my worry is if, a DMO is probably going to be set up as an outside organization that's going to have its own funding, executive director, board. It's set up as a 501c3 most likely, because I don't think we're going to be, I don't think the city is going to be running the DMO. Maybe, this is part of the conversation that we need to have. I just worry that just the actions necessary to create it are gonna take time, even if we come to a quick agreement about what we want it to be.
Well, I think we have to have a discussion, as been suggested already. It may be the answer, it may not be the answer, and I think that that's part of what we're going to be looking at. I know how it works in some other jurisdictions, but that doesn't mean that that's how it's going to work here. I think we have to make it what we need it to be. And we've got lots of good examples out there. So, I'm going to say, let's borrow liberally. If it works for us, let's not reinvent the wheel. So, you ready to move? Go ahead.
I just want to say, and that conversation's going to start, November.
Yes.
It may take a year, but in terms of the other timeline, I would hope we have the same process. We're kind of looking at doing the same event process as we did last year to get through.
Yep.
I would hope that would be finalized and grants. What is the timeline for finalizing those? March?
When I was talking with Mr. Graham, we were talking about advertising it much earlier. So
Yes.
January, late January, early February, to get that process moving.
Yeah. I think our events need to know by latest in, March.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to add.
So if we're on that timeline, I'm good with that.
Yeah, that's good. I was wondering if we could have an update, again, something I've been interested in. We have on Goal 5, Strategy 5.1, that staff was successful in securing a grant from the League of Cities to establish a local procurement program. And I would like us to get an update on what we're doing in that regard, because I know it was blended in with a few other things that we had talked about. So I'd like to know what is our program? And that's just for future updates. You ready to jump into 23-25?
Yes.
I don't really want to think about 25, but
I know Frank doesn't.
I do.
oh, come on.
Oh, is that your end date?
Now, we'll take that up later. That's one of those discussions that we're not going to have in a public setting because some people might get a little embarrassed, but anyway. So this is on item B, this is our new pamphlet that we're going to have here with our
Yes.
lovely pictures and so forth.
Correct. Yes.
With the newer pictures, I hope.
Of,
You need a new one.
The new ones are on the
I
city
don't like
website.
that
We
one.
all have new ones on the website. Those just aren't new in this.
I haven't seen the new one.
If you look on the city website, yeah, they're all updated.
Look on the city website, oh my God.
I definitely need a new one.
Oh, you have there's a new one. Yeah, not that one. That would be the old one.
Jacob, would you like to pull those up?
That's the one you use
just
when you
page
don't
up,
want to
page
get
up.
elected.
It's on, it should be.
That's the one you see in the post office.
Yeah.
That says
Or on a
wanted,
major
dead or
billboard.
alive. But yeah, but
That one's not much better.
no, I'm talking about on this goals, we had a pamphlet last year, the goals thing, so I don't think that's the picture that we're using.
Well, he works.
I don't know if I want to see this.
Close your eyes.
Can you just go to
put
the
your hand over
packet?
your eye.
Go to the agenda.
didn't you
bring
You
up
know, the
packet.
sad thing is the camera
Okay, just
doesn't
page right
lie.
there. Those are the pictures.
You got that right.
That's a terrible picture.
We just focus on pictures instead of
No,
the goals
that's-
for the rest of the night, or we want to move on?
Let's move on.
Okay.
Entertainment's
I didn't
portion-
mean to drive us in the ditch there, I'm sorry.
Entertainment portion is over.
All right.
I think it's just beginning.
So we took the goals here and then created the same type of tracking system for 23-25, really just getting started on diversity, equity, and inclusion, working with HR department and Mr. Foyles. And, you know, what we think we heard was, you know, how can we create a DEI community task force, an employee committee that's focusing on DEI, and then a training plan that can be incorporated over those 2 years. We'll be bringing that to the commission for a review and discussion, and then begin to implement those based on the conversations that we have related to that. Then we get into the next goals, information technology. Once again, this is really focusing on what the improvements are that we're making, just to keep the commission up to date on the investments that we're making citywide in our IT infrastructure and the upgrades that are happening. You know, not, you know, really a specific project. As you recall, we did the strategic plan, it identified steps to move forward. And so really this is just how can we implement, what can we implement with the funding that we have available to us, and the priorities that have been identified as we work through them. The next one is 2.2. So this is what I was talking about earlier, where we rolled over the goal, where we were finishing the master plan. So now for the remainder of this biennium, this is really going to be focusing on implementing the CIP list and having those discussions about system development charge fees, as well as the additional funding that would be necessary for the deferred maintenance and the projects that have been identified. You know, is that a bond? Is that a fee? Is that a tax increase? You know, those are the discussions that we anticipate coming forward in to complete this goal. And I'm just going to keep rolling through them, and if you have questions, just please interrupt as I'm going. Goal 2.3, once again, this was a very, very large one. I think what we were trying to show here was we have really, I mean, we have a significant number of public works projects going on, but the major ones were the successful projects that we have with WIFIA and the funding that we have associated with that, approximately, you know, those projects coming forward over the next multiple years. That's going to be 4, 5, 6 years worth of work there, but really trying to keep the commission up to date on how those WIFIA projects are progressing, and what to expect as we move forward. The other large one was the I&I work that we're doing. There's a significant amount of time, effort, and investment that's happening to try to separate our stormwater from our sewer. We have the ongoing programs such as PMUF, pavement maintenance utility work that we do. It's a really great program that's been really in place, but it is one that has a significant amount of investment and impact on the community during the summer paving months. And then the quiet zone as we continue to work through with the Oregon Department of Transportation on that project. So really just trying to give you some of the higher, bigger, larger projects that we're doing. 2.4, sidewalk and bike lane safety infill. So this is really trying to identify gaps in our sidewalks and bicycle facilities, but then really trying to merge those with other CIP infrastructure projects that we're doing. So this will be, really trying to fill in to, existing projects that we're doing where we notice those gaps and we can make them improvements to that public pedestrian infrastructure that we have. 2.5, so this is just a continuation and an update on the sidewalk program that the commission created. So this is the grant program for residents to utilize. So as you recall, we had set aside 200,000. We kind of just came up with that number. So this is a way to keep you up to date as how well that program is being utilized by the community. Initially, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of use of that program. As you can see, I think it's probably going to ebb and flow depending on how folks are aware as code enforcement issues come up. But right now, we're comfortable with the funding levels that have been identified that the commission has allocated for that. Goal 3.2 is dealing with community engagement. Once again, I imagine that this is going to be something where we're updating the commission on the advances that we're making. So you may recall that we initially funded a 0.5 FTE to assist with the Citizen Involvement Committee as well as the Youth Advisory Committee. Then you did allow me to increase that to a full-time FTE. So we're in the process right now. I think we're down to 9 applicants to fill that position. But really, I'm hoping through this, we're going to be able to provide updates of what we're doing to increase communication through CIC, Youth Advisory Committee, with the community, volunteer engagement opportunities. So really just to see how that investment is being utilized in the programs that are being created over the next 2 years with that funding. 4.1, this is the homeless liaison officer, behavioral health specialist. And then as you recall through this process, we funded a case manager position to supplement the behavioral health specialist. So once again, this would be providing updates on the work that's being done with the resources that have been provided so that you're aware of, how much we've increased, what we've been able to accomplish with the behavioral health specialist, with the homeless liaison officer, with the case manager to address some of the homeless issues that we are tackling here in our community. 4.2, camp cleanup. So we allocated some funds directly to parks to be able to work on cleaning up camps, debris and whatnot that we see in our city parks versus what we might see in the right-of-way or on private property. So this was a separate funding allocation specifically to deal with cleanups in our park. So that'll be a combination of Mr. Reed and his department working with that money and potentially in coordination with police and code, depending on what the issue is that we come across in those cleanup efforts that we see in our community. 5.1 talked a little bit about this related to the tourism. So really making sure that we can get out the funding in appropriate time to make it easier for our groups to plan for their city-sponsored public event programs, as well as the grant funding that's been made available. And then really the large part of this is going to be the discussion about, where do we go with tourism? Is it a DMO? Is it another avenue? Is it at a later date? So those are conversations that'll be coming. So this is a rollover from 21-23, really just, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, this is really in response to affordable housing production increases, middle housing, any kind of code requirement changes that are required or mandated from the state for local jurisdictions to implement. So this will be where we're tracking and providing updates related to the progress or the direction that we're receiving. Protecting is goal 7.1, protecting and preserving a healthy environment. So with this funding, this is really focusing on the work that we're doing with Friends of Trees. It's been a very successful program throughout the years that we continue to expand, not only in the planting, but in the workshops that we provide. And then some coordination with the Natural Resource Committee and some of the work that they're doing throughout the community and identifying, for example, street tree locations, street tree types, you know, some of the things that they would like to work on that we can potentially keep you updated on the progress that's being made. And then last, we have related to the environment is our National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, so our NPDS requirements. So really just trying to keep the commission updated on the work that we're doing related to the requirements, the testing, any code upgrades that come out of our NPDS permit that we're required to meet over the next 2 years. That was a quick kind of rundown of kind of getting started here on the next 2-year biennial process with the goals.
The only thing I would say is regardless of the category, whether it be infrastructure or homelessness or housing, we need to be relentless in our search for funding, specifically grants, government programs. You know, we just had this discussion at another board that I sit on with my compatriots about the value of grant writing and the return on a good grant writer. And I don't know if anyone within the city is tasked with monitoring those opportunities or who would write those if we became aware of them. But the payback on that is huge if we can do it. And I don't know how we accomplish that or if we accomplish it or if we currently just stumble upon it or if we're actively hunting for and pursuing in every way. I don't know how that's worked.
Yeah, I think right now it's probably a little bit of scattered, I guess, for lack of a better term. I know we know there's some that, like the state parks has, right? We know there's a cycle to it, right? You know, state and federal funding's a little bit of more hit or miss. You know, that could be a full-time job of trying to track down, unwind, and apply for those.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a methodical way of doing that. We had that discussion at the other board I sit on and actually sent someone to a grant writing seminar because we see value in the return on those investments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't know how they're executed. Thanks.
Yeah.
Further questions?
On goal 5, I realize this is a high level dashboard, but I would like to see a 5.2 that mentions tourism, because I mean, economic development and tourism are two different things, and I think we should have here on our high level document a way that we're tracking our progress on tourism. However it goes, I think it needs to be on that page.
I would agree with that. It's a component of economic development, but separate in its own right. It needs to be monitored.
Right.
Okay.
One thing to Commissioner O'Donnell's point about grants is hopefully with the addition of an assistant city manager, I know having looked at that description that there was talk about it, in addition to having some of the more inward facing departments, also having the opportunity to focus more on special projects. Or I can't remember if it was to also give you more time to focus on special projects, but whichever one it is.
Depends what the special project is.
Right, so exactly. So, but having the higher capacity with an additional staff member, I think would open a really great opportunity for us to be on top of that, because I agree with you. I think that's something that we definitely need to be involved with more. And another thing, in addition to grants, is making sure that we have strong relationships with our federal and state representatives, and making sure that we bring back the pork to Oregon City as we deserve. So.
And I would agree with that. I think it's that relationship building with the state and federal delegation as well as their staff, because that's where the information, the ideas are going to be able to be bounced and say, hey, we want to do ABC. Are you aware of a funding source in the behemoth of the bureaucracy where this might fit.
Yes.
All right. Communication?
There was, our plan right now is to bring back the Clackamas Park Master Plan on the 18th. So from 6 to 7 before the regular meeting in a work session type environment. I know Commissioner Mitchell is not going to be here as part of that discussion. There was a request to maybe do a site visit. I guess I just would love to have a conversation with the commission to see, would you like us to set something up for everyone to go have a chance to walk out there with staff, or would we like to postpone it? So I'll postpone it so all 5 of us commissioners can be together to have that discussion. Just looking for a little direction. We're trying to get it back to you quickly, but also want to be inclusive of everyone, so we're all kind of getting the same information as we try to work through this.
I'd like Commissioner Mitchell to be in the room.
I'll speak to that in general. And no one here devalues the input that we've already received. We just want to be assured that all options have been explored. I think a site visit to understand the situation is almost a mandate, and if we're going to speak about it, we should be familiar with the topography of it and how to best accomplish that. I'll leave up to Mr. Conkle, whether it be all of us, some of us. We want to make sure that all considerations were given, that nothing was overlooked. And again, we're not devaluing the inputs that we've already received. We just want to make sure that we're afforded the opportunity to search for the best solution. And if we've already discovered the best solution, so be it. But if there's another that was initially undiscovered, including by the architects themselves, we should explore it. And if the result of that in the end is the solution we've already been presented with is the best, then so be it. But I think we owe it to ourselves to pursue the best solution. And in the simplest terms, I still say I do not view camping next to 99 and the McDonald's as a quality experience. So how we do that, if that's how it turns out, that won't be my choice. But let's explore all the options and satisfy ourselves that we have indeed looked into it and considered all possibilities. A site visit and taking a walkthrough, which I've done once before and I'm willing to do again, it has value.
If the walkthrough is just the park, then I don't think it's valuable. If for me, I want to, basically, I want to consider all the space, not just what's in the master plan, but I think the space that, we still own the space behind Firestone, correct?
Yes.
So, I think that was so poorly planned when we did the Cove, to put a sidewalk right down the center of it instead of right on the street, because that area is a huge, expansive area, which could be overflow parking, it could be a dump station for the RV park, it could be any of those possible things. So if we did a walkthrough, I would like to see us do a walk of, that little strip right there, above, basically from the Cove Apartments to River Shore Hotel.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that.
That is the park. And not only thinking about, because if we think about the park, we have to think about, the Cove and the area around it and the connection to it. Because if we are questioning moving various components, we need to know what's around there and the options to do that. And I think the parking is a big component for me. I still think the RV park is a concern. And then we really didn't know if we were going to attempt to try to have, although I guess when we talked about the RV, individual RV sites had their own dumps. Is that correct?
We were going to be able to plumb it, I believe. Yeah.
Pardon?
We were going to be able to plumb it and provide electrical because we were up higher.
Connections at the individual sites, right?
Correct.
So that's why we didn't Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Okay.
See, my feeling is valuable information is even currently being exchanged piecemeal. Things like elevations and floodplains and it needs to be brought to one place for a comprehensive discussion.
Anything? Okay, commissioners, anything?
So hold on, what did I hear here? So are we going to postpone? I'm sorry, was that what you were
No,
about to do?
I was asking Mr. Mitchell if you.
Well, legally, we can't make any decisions at a work session, and this is a big topic, and we're not gonna make a very big dent in it in an hour, which I can watch a video of. I don't feel like I'm gonna be left out of the process if it happens when I'm not here at that hour-long work session on the 18th, because this is we're gonna have to loop back to the public. This is, yeah. That's just going to be an introductory kind of a, here's all the questions we have, let's get all the questions on the table kind of a meeting. And I can't see it going much further than that. So nobody needs to feel like I'm going to feel left out over an hour meeting, because it's not going to go very far.
Okay, sounds like it's on.
Okay, so it's on, and then I will send an email, if anybody's interested in a tour, and we'll figure out from there scheduling and interest and whatnot. So we don't have to do that right now.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I appreciate that comment from Commissioner Mitchell, because the reason why I ended up supporting bringing this back to a work session, as Commissioner O'Donnell and Commissioner Smith had requested, wasn't because I necessarily agreed that the changes were to be made, but because I felt it to be right, that their questions could be addressed. And so I don't personally have those questions and feel the need to take a walking tour of it or a site visit. But I do feel that once we have this work session, I'm not envisioning us going out for a whole nother public process. I think getting the input from the commissioners who wanted to get that input, as well as the information we already know from the extensive public engagement process, should hopefully be enough to move forward. And again, for myself, I reserve the right and the ability to continue moving forward as it was presented to us.
Oh, I agree, because we have yet to put together the list, the project list, and I think that's where the rubber's gonna really meet the road. This is a concept plan, and once we decide on what the projects are going to be, that's going to put it in, it's not in pencil anymore, it's gonna be in ink, so. Commissioners, do you have any, information to share? Yes, sir.
Yeah, one bit of interesting reading, and I should have brought this up when we were talking about our rules of procedure, but related to the item we were just talking about. When we talked about Robert's Rules of Order says that someone from the prevailing side can request a reconsideration at that meeting. Our rules of procedure say at that meeting or the next regular meeting, just so everybody knows. For the future.
Information, thanks.
Yeah, I read that and I was like, oh, okay.
Mr. Morrow,
Anyway.
any movement on C4?
Well, I'll save that for committee reports, but two things. Just another reminder that this Saturday, the Youth Advisory Commission is hosting their mental health fair. Everyone is invited to attend and show up to support the students. That's at the Pioneer Center this Saturday, the 7th, from 2 to 5, so you're all invited to that. And then I also just wanted to highlight an email that the 5 of us received, as well as some others, calling out our public works staff for their exceptional service to a resident being in this line of business. And by line of business, I mean us as a city being a service-oriented organization. It's easy for us to get our views distorted because primarily we hear feedback when things go wrong. And it's very little that we hear when things go right, because that's just how things are expected to go. And we received an email commending our public works staff and also contrasting that to their experience with a separate entity that wasn't as positive. And so I just want to thank our staff for that, and hope that despite the fact that this was an odd one out sort of email, that I do hear these comments frequently because our residents are pleased with how our staff treats them.
Mr. Smith?
I wanted to just give a couple thank yous to some people from participated in planning the second part 2 of the Pride Festival in Oregon City. The committee that put that on, which I'm included of, was never a formal committee. It now is becoming something, hopefully in the future, of that. But the second part of the Pride Festival that was scheduled this summer was held at the college on Saturday, September 23rd. Clackamas Community College was very supportive and gracious with letting the event happen at their facility. Oregon City Police Department did an incredible job. There was no incidences that we know of that had to do with the event. It didn't sound like. It went off without a hitch. There was very much a lot of people that attended, but the police department did a great job working with campus security and all the other event security that was there. We had a lot of representatives from the school board there. We had Commissioner Adam Otto showed up as well. I appreciate him stopping by for that. Metro Council President Linn Peterson was there. Jamie McLeod Skinner was there. There was a great turnout, and it was, I don't think it was, we celebrated an event just as a starting place. And I think that a lot of people took it as that. And, you know, what the future holds for the events that group does in partnership with other groups is yet to be determined. But I think it was pretty successful. I appreciate all the effort that was involved with all the volunteers and people that showed up that day. So thank you for that.
And thank you for covering for me since I was
Yes, I did, and I did.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem. I did mention that I was there in we actually read the proclamation.
Thank
So
you.
even though it wasn't a city sanctioned or sponsored event, I did reread the proclamation that we did in June.
Thank you so much. Commissioner O'Donnell. Okay. I want to close with, again, reiterating what Commissioner Morrow said about the health fair. Thank you I saw the A-frames at the library. They look great. So let me run through my list. So, our city recorder, still slogging through the backlog of minutes, and thank you for working on those. I know that's a pain in the butt. Sean, welcome back from your trip, and I'm glad it was successful, and I want to thank you and your staff for the commitment to the community in working on this code enforcement, code compliance, I like to call it, folks, and so we're getting there. Patrick, I appreciate your help with the South Fork Water Board evaluation. It was a great comfort to me to know that I had a professional in my corner as I was slogging through this. Jared and David, who just left, and Michael, thank you to the website team, because this is a big deal, and keep slogging away at it. Greg, again, high level of service that I continue to hear from the community about the library. Aquila, thank you for meeting with Downtown Association businesses and talking about zoning for downtown and dispelling all of these myths that come up about things we do and things we don't do. John, Patty, and Matt, and the staff that all worked on the WIFIA. We met this afternoon, early this afternoon, with staff from Senator Merkley's office and staff from Senator Wyden's office, and we gave them our laundry list again of things. I appreciate staff setting that up, and thank you to Tony for working on that and with our staff and giving our direction to that. Kendall, working with the community on getting those some of those IGAs and MOUs put together. I know that we still have a lot of work to do with our community, and I've been talking to people about, thank you for their participation, and I said I will be calling on you when we look at possibly looking for future funding, so that's real important to stay there. And thank you to Carrie and to Bill for slogging through the Housing Summit comments that I are going to be talking to them about this week, because we talked a little bit about it at Impact Metropolitan Policy Advisory Committee, and obviously I have some very strong feelings about that particular topic. And we also met with DLCD, the Department of Land Conservation Development Director, and I invited her to come to Oregon City so that we can show her what we are doing. She comes from an economic development and water resources background, not necessarily planning. So that was really, really interesting to chat with her. She's been on the job about less than a year. So anyway, thank you to everybody else. Thank you, community, for listening in tonight, and we are...
To exec session.
Executive session.